we can send that out. And
Okay.
then Julie, I'm going to spotlight you, and then I think we'll be ready to get started.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Julie McGrath, and I'm the chair of the PW Program Committee. And the other members who are also on the program committee are Miranda Reynolds and Blair Tuning, Barbara Glenn, Neely Bernhardt, and Susan Douglas Winefield. So we've had a great time pulling together a program this year that sort of balances between two major themes. One being the stress and the worry that goes along with the COVID pandemic. And the second is the anti-racism and what does that mean and how do we learn more about it and dig deeper and how can we make a difference? So those are the two sort of things that we're working on. And today we're going to be focusing on anti-racism. So Miranda is going to, in a couple minutes, be introducing our speaker, who is Reverend Reuben Boyd. He's from the third
Street, Bethel.
Thank you. And we're, in terms of questions, and he's going to be talking about clergy against racism. The questions, Reverend Boyd has asked us to hold our questions until the very end so that he can get through his presentation. So if you could be typing away and type into the chat room what your questions are, I'll be watching those with Blair's help probably to capture those so that about 10 or 15 minutes before the end, we'll be able to give him those questions and he can answer those for us. And so, please, all of our speakers love questions, so please do that. And then we have something new we're going to do today to try to capture that opportunity for fellowship. We tried something last month. We got the feedback. It didn't work as well as we thought. So this time what we're going to do is a little different. We're going to, in the email that went out from Blair yesterday, to get you into this meeting, there was a second link, and that will get you into a meeting that will be post Dr. Boyd's presentation. And that will give us an opportunity for two things. One is we're going to all be able to hear each other and see each other, so we'll have a chance for some fellowship. But Miranda's going to facilitate it as well, and it will be an opportunity to talk about what did we hear in the presentation? What are the things that really spoke to us? So she's going to be leading us through that. And, we are a work in progress. Every week, we're going to probably be making, little tweaks and stuff. So we appreciate your patience. And we want to also make sure we thank Carolyn Wright and Wilson Kennedy, because they really have guided us on this whole, format and technological journey that we're making here. So, and then if you are looking for that email from Blair, just want to give you the time and the date. It was dated yesterday on the 9th, and it was 3:04 p.m. So if you're going through your emails, you can find it there, and it's the second link. So
Julie, I've also put it in the chat for everyone to see.
What's that?
I've also put the Zoom link in the chat for everyone.
Oh, excellent. Terrific. Thank you. All right. Well, I want to introduce Miranda Reynolds. As I mentioned, she is on the PW Program Committee, and she is our chair of the day. And she has spent a lot of time with Reverend Boyd, getting to know him, and she recruited him. And so she's going to introduce him and let us get a chance to hear his message.
All right.
Thank you, Julie. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Miranda Reynolds, and I am honored to be introducing today's speaker, Reverend Reuben Boyd. As Julie mentioned, he is the pastor at 3rd Street Bethel AME Church here in Richmond. There, he's an engaging speaker and leader, particularly in these challenging times. I was first introduced to him and his work when reading a Richmond Times article in June about a group called Clergy Against Racism. This group of diverse and local faith leaders have come together in 2015, actually, is when they started out, to have the important and certainly uncomfortable conversations needed to create equality and more just, compassionate, and inclusive community. Reverend Boyd, thank you for being here, and I will turn it over to you now.
You're welcome. Thank you, Miranda, and thanks to all of you for inviting me. to be a part of this. Since we have 10 minutes, I'll jump right in it and I'd like to have a discussion to start this discussion off about Clergy Against Racism and what we're all about. Clergy Against Racism was founded in June 2015 after 9 church members were killed inside of Mother Emanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina. The murderer, Dylan Roof, had been welcomed into their Bible study. They had no idea that the young man was a white supremacist and was there to carry out his heinous acts of murder. Emanuel AME Church was chosen because of its civil rights history, and that massacre was a clear act of white supremacist violence. It was at that point that the nation realized that its racism was getting worse. A few days after 3rd Street Bethel AME Church held a prayer vigil, Reverend Matt Bates, pastor of Centenary United Methodist Church, decided to meet monthly and discuss racism, and Matt and myself decided to do that. And shortly before the first meeting, Reverend Brent Melton, then rector of All Saints Episcopal Church, called, and after that, Alex Evans, pastor of Second Presbyterian Church, also called, and both indicated that they would like to be part of our discussion. That first meeting began what is known now as Clergy Against Racism. Other clergy that was interested in having authentic conversations around racism found out about our meetings and began to inquire about joining the group. Clergy Against Racism, or CAR, known as CAR, is comprised of clergy and lay members that cross racial, denominational, and non-denominational faith and gender lines. The one prerequisite for belonging to CAR, you must be sincere about eradicating racism and come with a willing spirit to endure tough conversation. You heard me mention authentic conversation earlier, and I truly believe that authentic conversations will lead to authentic relationships, and those authentic relationships will create the energy to take down racism. The members of CAR, our first goal is to love and trust each other before we can help our congregations deal successfully with racism. So that was one of the first things that we decided, that before we took anything into our congregations, that we needed to take time, learn each other, and learn to love each other. And I have to say that I feel that our members have accomplished that goal. We have learned to love and respect each other. There is not one that I don't enjoy being around. We don't just meet once a month. There are breakfasts, there are lunch together. We just at times just get together. So we truly have learned to love and respect each other. We don't wait for some tragic to happen before we get together. CAR meets monthly and has been doing so for 5 years now. Our next goal was to forge an environment that we could bring our congregations within, that would allow them to have the authentic conversations and hopefully develop relationships. I came to the group believing that Blacks can't do it alone, nor can the whites. In August and October, CAR sponsored 2 successful Zoom town hall meetings that were designed to bring people together for conversation around racism. The first discussion was about the faith community's complexity in racism. We were able to break out into Zoom meeting rooms for lively discussions, and no one knew anyone in the rooms. We made sure that we broke them out, and we didn't want to put church members together. We wanted to make sure that it was broken out, and no one would know each other. The two town hall meetings were well attended and successful. And I say successful because it gave the attendees an opportunity to discuss some deep-seated feelings. The one complaint about the nights, those meetings, were they didn't have enough time in the breakout rooms, and several left those meetings with feeling so good that they decided that they wanted to get together outside of the meetings and made plans to do so after this COVID-19. So I was happy about that. And that's what we wanted to do, is to create an environment where people would come in and discuss racism and feel safe and comfortable at doing it. That's the whole objective that CAR is striving to accomplish. Bring the races together, talk about our pain or guilt that's associated with racism, and leave with a desire to create relationships that will tear at the heart of racism. CAR has held prayer vigils, with the most recent one coming after the Charlottesville incident that left Heather Heyer dead at the hands of a white supremacist. We have had joint worship services and Station of the Cross walks, all intentional to bring our people together for, and here goes these words again, for authentic conversations that will lead to authentic relationships. Now, after the pandemic has passed, we have plans of bringing forth other events that will allow us to come together across racial and faith lines. CAR looks forward and truly believes that we will become the model that others will pursue. I was just talking with one of our members that has moved to Charlotte, and we're talking about starting a similar group there. Now, I would like to move to some of the tough discussions that we have that we've encountered during our CAR meetings. But before I do so, the first thing I want to say before getting started is I'm very much aware that we all enter this discussion with different experiences, especially when it comes to racism. Some of us have lived it, and others have only heard about it. And I can assure you that there's a difference between the two. Those of us that have lived through the degradation, humiliation, and heart-wrenching pain of racism will have a different view than those who experience it from the sidelines. There are so many places that I can start when talking about racism. But for today's discussion, let me just start with my definition of racism. Racism is when one or a system has the power to oppress or devalue another person's life because of their color of skin. Here in America, that power to oppress or diminish the value of others' lives have typically rested in the hands of white America. Let me give you an example. And again, these are some of the discussions we have in CAR, and if you're not willing to be tough and to deal with the questions, then you don't want to be a part of CAR. I'm going to give you an example of a question that I asked during a Clergy Against Racism meeting. I asked for the show of hands from any of our white clergy brothers or sisters that could claim that they had been oppressed or felt devalued at the hands of a Black man. Not surprising to me, no one raised their hand. Why? Because for the most part, Blacks have never had the power to oppress or devalue the lives of white people. I'm not here to shame anyone about any part that you or your forefathers may have played in perpetuating what has now been tagged by Jim Wallace as America's original sin. No, I'm not interested in shaming anyone, for I am more interested in discussing the truth about the fear, pain, and anguish that's hidden within racism, not to mention the guilt that some of you may feel. One of the things that I brought also into the group was and wanted them to consider that it is hard for a white mother to understand what a black mother goes through when they are releasing their child to go out on a date. Because in most cases, the black mother has to warn the child of things they need to do if approached by the police. You know, be quiet, keep your hands where they can be seen, and definitely be obedient. You don't have to, a white mother doesn't have to worry about that. Your child goes out, you don't have to warn them about such. So though that was just one instance where I asked the group to please think about that, because this is what CAR is all about. It's about conversation built around the truth about racism, and hopefully that conversation will allow us to build better relationships, and it's those relationships that will help us tear down the walls of racism. But you've got to feel it. I want you to feel what we as Black people feel when we're faced with racism. Truth telling is essential if America ever expects to move beyond the evils of racism. The Bible says in John 8:32, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Ken Wisma says in his book, The Myth of Equality, the purpose of truth telling range from a disinterested pursuit of facts to an honest facing of history and culture in pursuit of a more just future. We must uncover the untruths that have supported the evils of racism and answer the questions that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. asked in his last book, Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? We must uncover the untruths that have allowed some to find a sense of comfort in supporting racism. The truth will make you angry, or at least uncomfortable, and that's all right as long as the anger or uncomfortableness leads you to make constructive changes and not fuel hatred. The truth is what will lead to repentance of America's past sin of racism and cut a path to reconciliation. The truth is what will lead us to become that more perfect union where there is equality and justice for all Americans, regardless of skin color. In the book, America's Original Sin, Jim Wallace says we can no longer be afraid of the truth about race in this country, past, present, and future, because our fears will keep us captive to all kinds of untruth. Look at what's happening today. Look at what's happening today in our politics. Look at the chaos in this country. Look at the untruths. Now truth seems to be what is, the untruth, it seems to be what is unaccepted today. So just imagine what it would be like if we all could be truthful about this thing called racism. In order to reach that more perfect union, and I do believe that we will get there someday, we will not be able to accomplish it without some truthful discourse. I heard someone say once that you cannot heal what you don't understand. And we would never understand unless we're willing to listen to each other. And the only way that we can do that is to stay in the room. You can't get upset and leave. We've got to stay in the room. Stay in the room and don't leave when the discussion gets painful or offensive. We would never solve this problem of racism by running away from a discussion laced with truth, a truth that can only be heard when both sides stay in the room. I hope that all of us that are present today will begin to think about a truthful discussion. It is time out for coming to a gathering just to be politically correct or leave with a satisfied conscience that you have done your part by attending one or two discussions about racism. We all are doing our part when we continue the conversation and work even when it hurts. True healing and reconciliation will only occur when one is truthful about their pain, their guilt, or the part that they played or experienced in racism. And let me stop for a minute there, because it may sound like I'm just saying maybe that only whites experience, only blacks experience racism. There's one of our members in Carr that is a white pastor, and his daughter, his wife is black, so his daughter is interracial. He talked to the group about how he felt when his daughter would come home upset because of how she had been treated in school because of her color. And it was at that point that I really realized that blacks are not the only ones that experience the pain of racism, that there are some whites that know how blacks feel, and basically because they're either married or have children that's interracial. And so it's not a thing that only blacks get to feel the pain of racism. I do understand that the whites also feel that pain. Truth and reconciliation is something that I will deal with a little later if we have time. The question arises when people of color are seen protesting for equality and justice. The question is, what do they want? Well, let me tell you what they want. They want access to good education, better health care, equal justice, and policies that precipitate a way out of poverty rather than push them deeper into it. In other words, people of color want the same thing that whites are privileged to have. Maybe this is a good time for me to talk about a little bit about white privilege. And as I said earlier, you have to be able to stay in the room, and that's what CAR is all about. Whether you're white or black, we have true conversations, authentic conversations. So maybe this is a good time for me to talk about white privilege, which will likely be met with some ambivalence by some of you maybe. Contrary to what some may think, a discussion about white privilege is not some vain attempt to make white people feel guilty or shoulder the responsibility of what's happening to poor people of color. I recognize the problem that some whites may have with the word white privilege. For that word alone suggests to a successful white person that their success did not come from hard work or talent. To the contrary, I have no doubt that just like myself and others of color, a majority of whites have worked hard and had to rise up from meager beginnings. Yet they did so with benefits stacked in their favor. This may be hard for some to understand, especially the whites who point to the fact that poor white men's life expectancy is in decline due to alcoholism, overdose with opiates, suicide, and they face poor health conditions as poor people of color. No doubt there are whites that are struggling with financial problems and probably don't feel as though they are benefiting from any privilege. I would venture to say that their problem is they never learn to live up to the expectation of white privilege, for it is real, and what they do or don't do with it is on them. Ken Wismer wrote in The Myth of Equality, white privilege means that even if you are the unluckiest white person born in the United States, you were still born into a fortunate race. The privilege afforded to the white race in modern Western history is undeniable. White privilege doesn't mean that your life as a white person hasn't been hard. It does mean that for people of color, their life can be harder simply because of their skin color. A few days ago, some time ago, I heard a white lady say on Dr. Phil that she had never benefited from white privilege because she had had to work hard all of her life. She probably never noticed that while she was working hard alongside some hardworking Black person, she was paid more than the Black person. That's white privilege. It is my opinion that she had been so used to living with white privilege that she never recognized it. It's hard to see it from within, but those that live outside of white privilege can surely see it. In my hometown of High Point, North Carolina, I saw several years ago what white privilege did to Blacks trying to survive in the landscaping business. At one time, it was dominated by Blacks until a middle-class housing boom, and the white men discovered that there was money to be made. And now the lawn service business has become oversaturated with whites that can afford the best equipment or are given loans that Blacks can't get, and so that they can afford the expensive painted trucks and receive their best contract. That's, my brothers and sisters, is a result of white privilege. Now, I don't begrudge any white person for taking advantage of white privilege. Just own up to it and don't act as though it doesn't exist. Robert Jensen, a professor at the University of Texas at Austin, wrote an essay, How White Privilege Shapes the U.S., and said, like anyone, I have overcome certain hardships in my life. I have worked hard to get where I am, and I work hard to stay there. But to feel good about myself and my work, I do not have to believe that merit as defined by white people in a white country alone got me here. I can acknowledge that in addition to all that hard work, I got a significant boost from white privilege, which continues to protect me every day of my life from certain hardships. At the very end of Jensen's essay, he says, a first step for white people, I think, is to not be afraid to admit that we have benefited from white privilege. It doesn't mean that we are frauds who have no claim to our success. It simply means that we face a choice about what we must do with our success. White privilege is fueled by a structure that has existed ever since this country was stolen from Native Americans and built upon the Anglo-Saxon premises of white only. It's no secret that when the forebears of Pilgrims and the Puritans fled the Church of England, they came to America with an intent to keep alive the Anglo-Saxon legacy that they felt had been compromised in the English church. They believed themselves to be free from the taint of mixed marriages, to be people of high morals and lovers of freedom, very similar to those religious people today who follow the president and believe that their freedom is being threatened by people of color. If you don't think that I know what I'm talking about, then read Germania, the works of a Roman philosopher named Tacitus, and see how close the early religious white American belief follow his thoughts about achieving a white world only. It's the same myth that has fueled Trump's vision to make America great again. His vision for greatness is nothing more than a dog whistle politics that's resonating with those that have been longing for a white America free from non-whites. After coming off of 8 years of a Black president, Trump successfully stoked the fears of those whites that were afraid for 8 years that there was going to be some takeover of America by Blacks, and others are fearful of the fact that by 2040, whites will no longer be the majority race within America. It is that fundamental demographic shift in racial and cultural identity that is fueling the politics of today. Make America Great Again is a clarion call for white America to return to what they perceive to be simple and better days when they didn't have to put up with black kids going to school with their children, or blacks moving into their neighborhoods. They want to go back to that white America that would have allowed a black man to become president, that would not have allowed a black man to become president. You know, somebody didn't think that thing over. For if they wanted a white America, I've always said, then why did they import all of those black people from Africa? Though we can't blame anybody now, Trump or any of the racists now for the sense of racism, his rhetoric and policies have certainly been a catalyst in exacerbating racism. You see, if there's one thing that I understand is the level of racism and the division that we're seeing in this country today, that did not start with Trump. I have to give him credit for being able to wake up the evils of the old Anglo-Saxon myth of white only and use it as a path to the presidency. The myth of old Anglo-Saxon belief of white only has given me a better understanding also why so many evangelicals decided to follow him. Even today, after this election that has just taken place, and to look at the division in this country and to see the number of people that voted, and this may sound strange, you may not agree with me, but I have to believe that white supremacy and racism just runs so that deep into this country now. And that's why a group like CAR is so important, so that we can come together and do what we need to do to stand against this evil called racism. I'm no longer surprised that religious people play such a part in supporting this administration, this administration of a wannabe despot that sympathizes with the white supremacists and other leaders of the world. Why am I not surprised? Ever since the inception of racism, the subjugation, enslavement, and murder have been justified in the name of religion for the sake of white power. I've read a lot of history, and a lot of it goes way back before this country was ever formed, and how religion played a part in the lives of the Europeans, and how even before this country was formed, religion played a part in racism, in accepting racism, and the oppression of people of color. So knowing that history, and something that I don't even have time to go in today, and you may know some of that history yourself. It just makes me aware of where we're at today, and again how much religion has played a part into it. Yes, our churches have supported it way before this country was even formed, before 1695, before they brought the first slave to the shores of Virginia. It was all, that cast was already set. So I totally get it why some parts of religion they cry about racism, abortion and same-sex marriage and illegal immigration. I totally get that, and they do that and hide behind the Bible in doing so. But I'm a conservative. I believe, I'm not one that believe in abortion. Now, when it comes to same-sex marriage, that's for God to deal with those people. I don't feel that I have a right to turn them away from the church, and I have not turned them away from Third Street Bethel. I'll allow our gay congregation they have the same rights of anybody else in the church. Now, whether I agree with their lifestyle or not, I'm not God, so I can't play the judge. But I think that there is something wrong with Christianity or faith, that one will sell their souls to the devil and walk away from their moral values for the sake of Supreme Court justices or federal justices. I just believe that there's something wrong with that situation. Now, I wish that I had time to dive deeper into some of the things that I have discussed, but since time does not permit, let me just leave a couple of thoughts with you. First of all, as people of faith, we must call out the hate by name and cast it out of where we want God to be. If we want God to be in our lives, houses of faith and homes, then cast out the evils of hatred. Casting out means no longer making excuses for purveyors of bigotry. Christians must be people of moral conscience who will reject hate, racism, division, and sexism, all while claiming to be followers of Jesus. It is Jesus who demands that we be concerned about the least of these in Matthew 25. The hungry, the thirsty, naked, the strangers, and those sick and in prison. He said that that's what the kingdom of God should look like. We as Christians must seek racial healing. Someone may ask, what does that look like? Gail Christopher with the Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation Enterprise that was created by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation said our country was found on this idea of a taxonomy of human value, where some people are more valuable than others based on their physical characteristics. Racial healing means getting rid of that belief and replacing it with the understanding of our common humanity, our equal humanity. It also means acknowledging the harm that adhering to that belief has caused and repairing the damage that has been created by that false ideology. Isaiah 58:12 calls us to be repairers of the breach, the restorers of the path to dwell in. I think I've taken my 10 minutes or more, so I will stop there and just say again that CAR is an organization that goes across denominational and racial and gender lines, and in order to be a member of CAR, you've got to be strong, tough enough to stay in the room, because we bring up issues, we talk about issues like some of the issues you just heard me talk about, and sometimes it can get difficult in the midst of those discussions, but we all leave still caring about one another and with a desire to make change wherever change can be made. So I thank you for listening to me, and I will not take any more of the time, because if I can continue on, but I will not. And let me encourage you to please, at some point, join some of our CAR discussions. We meet now by Zoom once a month, every fourth Thursday morning at 11:30. And prior to that, we were meeting in the different churches. Each month we would rotate off. And so I encourage you to join in and just listen to some of the discussions sometimes. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Boyd. And I am so sorry if you thought you only had 10 minutes, because we just wanted to have 10 minutes for questions. So I'm thrilled that you went longer than 10 minutes, because you had a lot of wonderful things to say.
Okay.
So as promised, we did get some really amazing questions, but your talk was so stimulating and so so interesting, and just raised probably more questions than we know how to answer ourselves. So it's wonderful to have you with us to help us with that. So I know you talked a little bit about the complicity of the churches. And so could you tell us more about that? And do you have any examples of how churches have been complicit in encouraging and supporting racism through time?
And I mentioned some of it earlier in the even before slavery, how the European churches decided that they would accept slavery because it was beneficial to them, and so they came up with these things that blacks were less than a man, ignorant, and it made it easy for them to accept it. Now let me bring it to today when I say that the church is complicit. When you sit behind your stained church windows and read about racism, see it on the news, but never make any moves to fight against that racism, to stand up and speak out and say that this is not right, then you're complicit with it. You may not be racist, but you're complicit with what's happening. You're not, so those that's not saying anything, those that are afraid to speak up and speak out, and they're just silent about it, they're complicit. Now let me say this. That's not only in the white church or the predominantly white churches. That complicity is found in the black churches. For you heard me say early on that we have a strong social action team at 3rd Street. Well, we also have those that never join in with any of our social action events, never support it, and they're members of our church. So I say to them that they're being complicit also, because they have lived with this thing, but they rather sit back and not do any of the work necessary to help us rid this country of racism. So just being silent, just being silent. Pastor never preaches about racism, and this may not even happen in any of your churches, but it does happen. Or if he preaches about it, members don't want to hear it. That's being complicit.
Okay. All right. So a couple of people really appreciated your definition of white privilege. So that was terrific. One person says they agree with that "Make America Great Again" is a poor slogan because America has not always been great for many people. Now that the election is over, where do we go from here to combat racism? Which is probably what's all on our mind in terms of how do we get involved? How do we do something to make a difference, either as an individual or, do something, for instance, with a church. You mentioned earlier a black church and a white church doing something together. How is it that we can do something to combat racism?
Okay, and that is absolutely how we can do it. That's where Clergy Against Racism comes in at. First of all, some of the and to show you what type of members we have in Clergy Against Racism. After the election, some of my white pastors, friends, called me just to ask me how are you doing, and so they were considerate about, because they know that this election was a matter of life or death, I believe, for blacks. because I do believe that 4 more years of the past 4 years, which has tried to set us back, take our voters' rights from us, all of the voter suppression that's been going on, and those things that have been put into place to counter mass incarceration. We had an attorney general that was trying to make sure that he keeps the prison full of blacks, and so many blacks in prison did not deserve the length of time that they got. We could do the same crime of our white brothers and sisters, but we end up with more time for the same crime. And so how do we move forward from here? How do we move forward from here by being part of an organization like CAR? And we are definitely, we believe in authentic conversation, authentic relationship builds, authentic relationships. And how do we get that? By coming together, because as I said earlier, this thing we cannot expect the white race to battle racism by themselves. You can't expect the blacks to do it by themselves. It's going to take all of us working together, understanding you. And what we try to do is make sure that both sides understand each other, how we feel, the pain that we feel. And then I want to know how it affects you, because a lot of times you're dealing with maybe some guilt. And that can be traumatic. So what we're doing is trying to bring people together, have discussions, and those 2 events that I told you about, the reason they were so successful is just to as I moved into the different Zoom rooms and to see the people together, didn't even know each other, from different churches, and I think the first event we had 226 people to sign up to register for it, and believe it or not, a majority of those people were white. But we tried to make sure that we balance out the rooms, to have half and half, so that we could get real discussion. But what I was getting ready to get at is to, at the end, when we brought everybody back together, and everybody was so concerned about not having enough time, they loved the discussions that took place in the rooms, and they felt we didn't give them enough time. And then people were actually talking about they enjoyed the group that they were with, and they wanted to get together even outside once COVID is over, that they met people in a Zoom room and just discussion, safe discussion, people being truthful, left people, and I thought that was amazing. I said, just meeting in a Zoom room, I want to see you have some personal contact with you, and be able to look you in the eyes, and before I decide, hey, I don't know if I'm gonna want to deal with this person or not, but that's not what happened. Everybody felt so comfortable in those Zoom rooms that and so when we had the second town hall meeting, they inquired about going. They wanted us to put them in the same group. People want to know, can I be in the same group? And we were able to do something to a certain extent, but it didn't work out the way we wanted it to. But it still was a great discussion. And so this is what we're trying to do. I don't know. We've had Station of the Crosswalks each Good Friday, and we've had members from Centenary, Second Presbyterian, St. Paul Episcopal, All Saints, 3rd Street, Sharon Baptist, Hood Temple, which are some of the black churches, and all, and we walked for about I think this is about 2 mile walk downtown, and we stopped at different churches and city hall and place and prayed. But as we marched along, people were singing songs and talking, and it was so those are the kind of events that we think that needs to happen, bringing people together, having discussion, and learning to enjoy each other and understand each other's pain. That's going to go a long ways toward helping alleviate this sin called racism.
So I just have a quick follow-up question to what you just said, and then I'm going to ask
Okay.
you another more interesting question.
Okay.
From one of our participants. But my impression when I heard clergy against racism is that it was the clergy from a variety of different churches who got together. But I'm beginning to understand that it's really participants or people, lay people who also are coming together.
We now, yes, we now have lay people. When we started out, our intention was to remain small, mm-hmm. so that we could get to know each other, and so now, and even with our intention to remain small, that the group has begun to grow because other pastors or clergy found out about the group, and now we've got lay people that's interested in the discussion. So we are, we have included some lay, and we have allowed other clergy in, and gonna push for more now. But yeah, it started out with Second Presbyterian, St. Paul Episcopal, All Saints Episcopal, Third Street, and Centenary United Methodist, Hood's Temple, AME Zion, and Sharon Baptist. That was the first group. It started actually with three of us: Alex Evans at Second, Matt Bates at Centenary, and myself. We decided that after the Charleston 9, after those people were murdered, that we would get together for discussion each month over lunch, and just talk about what can we do. How can we bring a change in this community against racism? How can we change the dynamics of racism in this community? But now it has grown to other congregations or churches. Pastors have joined.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for answering that. I appreciate that. It sounds like if we wanted to get involved, there would be a pathway for that. Mm-hmm. So let me go to a question. I understand and accept the concept of white privilege. I struggle to accept a central tenet of critical race theory that all whites are born racist. How can we come to a meeting point on the evils of racism by adopting an ideology that begins with a racist precept? So there's a nice challenge.
Okay, you sort of faded away, so I didn't catch all of it.
Sorry.
Can you repeat it?
Sure. I understand and accept the concept of white privilege. I struggle to accept the central tenet of critical race theory that all whites are born racist. How can we come to a meeting point on the evils of racism by adopting an ideology that begins with a racist precept? So I said that's a little bit of a challenge for you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't accept that the tenet that all whites are born racist. I don't agree with that, because if that was the case, I surely we would not have Clergy Against Racism, whites that are willing to fight against it. I don't agree with that. I do believe in what we're doing, and that we're moving in the right direction by trying to bring our people together with understanding of each other, the pain, and allow that to develop our relationships, and those relationships will go out and into the world knowing better, wanting something different, and began to talk to others and change, because racism, you're going to have to change minds. you're going to have to change people's hearts. And the only way we can do that, it's going to take people to do that. And we at CAR believe that that's what we are working toward, making those changes. And then that was slapped down the old white supremacist ideology. I just think it's going to take people of faith, people that understand each other, people that's willing to make a change. And that's our goal. That is our goal. And it's just been, I don't know if any of you had an opportunity to attend any of, maybe our town hall meetings or our vigils. We've had prayer vigils. We've had a town hall meeting on the campus of VCU where we allowed the students to come in, and that was a great event. That and it maybe got a little rowdy for a while, but it gave people an opportunity to really say what they wanted to say, and you know, so we're having things like that. And what our next goal was to we want to have dinners where we invite the community in. We want to read books that's based around racism and how to change it, and invite the authors of the books in during dinner, and so that we can discuss the book and have dinner. And then again, we just believe that we need to learn to enjoy each other and understand our humanity. You know, we've got more, I think, in common than we realize as people. This thing called color is unfortunate because God did not create race. Race is a social construct that man created. And so even when I talk about Black America or white America and all, I feel sort of, I don't really like saying it that way, because then that I'm playing into this race thing. People are people. America should be America, and not based on, yes, ma'am.
I have a question. There's a lot of questions and I can't keep up with them all. So, but one that I've been hearing a lot the last few days is the whole thought about that racism is not a zero-sum game. Race relations does not constitute a zero-sum game. Can you comment on that a bit?
Okay, that race is not a zero-sum game.
Right. So that, for instance, in my white privilege, if you as a Black person get more wealth and power and influence, that takes something away from me, versus that it really makes both you and I stronger, and our community stronger.
And it does, and it does. We know that racism itself, all the basis for racism is economics. That the reason that slavery came about was to enrich the pockets of the slave owners. When they discovered that tobacco and cotton and all, they could make a lot of money, well, they needed somebody to work those fields. And so there came the racism. But this country, I believe, and I will always believe, that this country is a rich country, and it was made upon the backs of slaves. But we shouldn't get hung up on that as Black people. We should strive to do our best to gain. And you're absolutely right. When we gain, then it works for everybody. It works for everybody. But so often when we attempt to gain, we have so many stumbling blocks put in our way to keep us from accomplishing.
Well, I'm going to unfortunately need to cut it off there. We're just a couple minutes over, but there are a lot of questions that we didn't get to. A lot of people are interested in knowing more about your car meetings and how they can get involved. And I think either Miranda or I will circle back with you to get some information about that.
Do that, and I will gladly give you the information. We would love to have you have anyone to come in on our Zoom meetings on the fourth Thursday at 11:30. So if you get the information to me, I will make sure that you get the Zoom information. We have to send it out to you, so they would have to get that information. Give me the email information but just get back in touch with me. I'll tell you what you need to do. We'll gladly have you to chime in. Anybody. But I will say that when you chime in, be willing to listen to tough discussions.
Right.
Be willing to be truthful yourself, and because if not, we don't want you to be a part of it. We want those that are sincere about combating this thing of racism. And I have some I must be honest, I had to change some myself, because being a person that skin gets so fair in the wintertime that I had to live with the fact that blacks at times would treat me in school not so fair because I was so light in color. And yes, my blood is all mixed up. But so I ended up with some prejudice myself that I had to learn to rid myself of. And because you never forget those times in high school when you're in a line and spitballs are hitting you behind your head and your name, you're being called names. You never forget. Now I'm old enough to remember going in a department store and my mother snatching me back from the water fountain because it had one for white and one for color, and taking me to a corner fountain. So those things ate me alive at times, but thank God for salvation, and thank God for my white brothers and sisters that I was able to meet and find that they are genuine people, and we all got things in common. And I learned, I had to learn myself to accept people, not for color, but for their heart. And so please join. We would love that. We would love it. So please get with me. I will give you that information.
We will come back to you on that.
We would love it.
But so I'm sure I and those of us who are here today are sorry. Hearing what you said about the spitballs going past your head is another hurt, another way to put another human being down, and we
Yes.
all, that's terrible. But so I'm going to wrap up with a comment from one of our, we have lots of terrific comments, but one of the comments from today. Thank you so much for your honesty and powerful sharing. And I think you've, and then putting it with another one, you really, stretched us and made us hear sometimes a uncomfortable message.
And I was worried about that. I am a person I like to be truthful, but I think I called yesterday and wanted to make sure what could I say. I wanted to be talk about Carl, but also talk about some of the things we talk about. But I will tell you that if you come into Carl's conversations, you will have an opportunity to ask questions that you may have, and that you didn't get answered today. I love my group. I call it my group, but it's not my group. We all, three of us founded the group, but I truly do love the brothers and sisters that belong to that group. And so please do join us. Get with me. I will definitely give you the information so we can make sure that you get that everyone gets the email inviting them to join that meeting.
Okay, all right, that
Thank
sounds
you.
great. Thank you
Thank you
again
so
for
much.
It's
Thank
been a
you.
pleasure.
Thank you, Miranda, for inviting or putting this in place. Thank you. And
Thank you.
Wilson, it's good to have met him. And I see his picture on, so I guess he's still on, maybe. There he is.
Likewise.
Thank you so much for allowing me to share this time with you. All
I
right.
just remind everybody, because Blair, don't go off yet, because first of all, I just want to remind you that in 10 minutes after Blair signs off, come back on for an opportunity to discuss today. I can tell from the comments that, it's been challenging. There's not a lot of agreement. Let's put it that way. So it's wonderful to be stretched. And so 10 minutes after, to sign back in with that second link that came from Blair. And so I'm
Okay.
now over to Blair.
Okay.
And,
I have another meeting scheduled.
okay.
So-
All right. Good. So we'll let you go. Thank you.
You're
But,
excused.
But I
Thank
would
you,
I
Reverend
would
Boyd.
love to have come back with that. I didn't understand you were gonna want me to do that, but
Oh, no, we don't,
Please.
Reverend. It's Miranda is going to lead it. She's going to facilitate a discussion. We usually, after we have lunch, and hear the speaker, we stand up, we chit chat, we talk about what we've heard. And that's what we're going to do in 10 minutes from now. And Miranda's going to facilitate that. So we
Okay.
don't expect to be
If-
there.
if-
But
and
so much.
if I come back, I may not be able to stay long, but I might just chime back in just to see what's being said.
Please do.
Okay.
Okay.
All
All
right.
right.
God bless
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Okay, Blair, it is all over to you.
Before I close our meeting with prayer today, I would like to extend a very special invitation to each of you who are on the Zoom call. As we approach the seasons of Thanksgiving and Christmas, PW seeks to serve others, and that means we need you. If you go to the PW page on the FPC website, you'll see a beautiful tower of gifts and the explanation of this year's giving tree. Like so many other things, it's a virtual tree this year, but participation is very easy. We have an opportunity to team up with STEP, one of FPC's community partners, to bring Christmas to the children of Gilpin Court. You will see a sign-up genius for toys with details about how, when, and where to bring your gift to the church. You will also see a second sign-up genius for those who feel comfortable and are willing to volunteer at the STEP Christmas store on December 5th at the Calhoun Community Center. I'll be going that day, and I'm happy to organize carpools. Please consider how you might support this important PW project and
Okay.
get the word out to the rest of the congregation. On a different note, I offer another invitation of sorts, and that is to hold in your hearts those in our congregation who are enduring physical trials themselves or whose loved ones are experiencing illness or surgery. Especially our PW sisters, Barbara Caperton, Nancy Bowman, Rosemary Davenport, Trudy Marable, Sharon Spencer, Susan Mountcastle, and Nancy Daw. Reverend Boyd, I echo Julie's words of thanks for your message today. We will offer our closing prayer today for Carr and for the important work you are doing and guiding us to do in our community. Let us pray. God of peace, love, and hope, you have brought us to this time and to this place. Though the road stretching out before us is one of uncertainty, we are a people of hope. You, O Lord, have given us that gift. Help us to acknowledge what is broken in our world. You, O Lord, have given us that capacity. Teach us to engage others, focusing on what we have in common rather than on our differences. You, O Lord, have given us that vision. Lead us to reconnect by listening to and genuinely hearing the stories of others. You, O Lord, have given us that ability. Let us continue on this journey as your people of hope, confident and sure that you walk beside us as we work to bring your kingdom to earth as it is in heaven. You, O Lord, have given us that faith. We shout with thanksgiving, grateful to you, O Lord, for our abundant blessings. Send us out into your world to share the good news and the amazing grace that you, O Lord, have bestowed on each of us. Amen. Thank you all for being here today, and I look forward to seeing you in about 10 minutes in our fellowship time.